Hi guys, welcome back to Home Glass Hacks with me, Laura Quinn. So we've been learning how to make really low-tech baking methods for working with glass at home, but today I'm going to take it one step further. So if you're a glass student or you're a glass worker and you're away from your hot shop at the moment, there's things you can be doing right now during lockdown when you have to stay at home that you can use when you get back into the workshop. So what I'm going to be working on today is making a blow mould, a glass blowing mould, out of plaster, toilet paper pulp and sawdust. So the toilet paper pulp and the sawdust help the moulds to maintain moisture when you're blowing into them, and they act like grog as well, so your moulds are quite strong. These moulds last up to 40 units if you look after them, which is quite good for a plaster blow mould. So I'm also going to be covering a little bit about CAD and how you can be really using your computer while you're at home during lockdown, so that when you get back into the workshops, you're ready to go with your moulds, ready to blow into them. So I'll show you some designs that I did up last year and over the past while. This is my tumbling tumbler design. So I've done a few iterations of that. These are 3D printed in PLA. You can see these are solid forms. Inside there is about a 5% infill on that, so they're really actually quite hollow, but there still is a little bit of structure inside just to maintain some strength in them. We also have some bowl designs for martini glasses, or this one is more similar to a traditional champagne glass. So I'll show you a photo of that now so you know how it ends up. The top part is blown, so it looks all very uniform and unique. And then the stem of the glasses I make completely freehand, and then I join them together. So you'll see in the top of these I've got 2 holes in either of them. These holes act as a way to actually pull these up out of the mould. When I'm making molds, I always try to consider, can I make it in one part? Because if I'm blowing on my own, which a lot of us might be after lockdown, we might have to be blowing solo. I want to be able to really make my life easy for myself. So a 1-part mould is far easier to use without an assistant than a 2-part mould. But you can still use a 2-part mould by yourself. You just have to be smart the way you go about it. So what I did for these was designed a part of a torus shape, which is kind of a tunnel that runs down into this 3D print and back up again. So when I cast these, I cast them in a 1-part mould. I can literally just run a string through and pull it up. You'll notice as well, it can be a 1-part mould because there's no undercuts in the piece. If this piece were to go back in at the top, it would have to be a 2-part mould. The one I'm going to be showing you today is my design for my Vortex whiskey tumbler. This is one of the prints I did for it. So you can see it's a square base that goes into a round top, and it twists up to the top of it. So for this form, it actually has to be a 2-part mould. And what we do is do 1/2 up to each corner either side, and then we cast that, and then we flip around and then do the other side. So it is a 2-part mould. You can work with this on your own in the hot shop. It's a little bit trickier, but you just have to set yourself up right for it. So we'll get started. You need sealed wooden or plastic boards. These just have to be waterproof, and this is the base where you're going to put your positive mould form and your clay base around it. You need some modelling clay. This can be reused over and over again as long as you keep it clean and damp. You're going to need something to cast from. Here I have a few samples of the 3D prints that I have cast using this method before. You need some real wood fine sawdust. You can get this from many workshops. There might be bits in it, but you can just pick these out. You'll need some toilet paper. This doesn't need to be a high grade quality. You'll need some Vaseline or oil. This does depend on your design. This acts as a lubricant and a release. You'll need 4 acrylic sheets or 4 sealed wooden boards. Make sure you take off the plastic film before you start. I use a surf form to neaten up the edges of my mould, and you can also use a set square to make sure everything is lined up correctly. You'll need a measuring vessel. This can be a jug or a cup. And you'll need a respirator with a particulate filter. One last thing that I forgot to include in here is that you'll need a mixing bucket for your plaster. You'll see in this video I'm using a mop bucket, but rubber buckets are extremely handy if you've got one of them to use instead. Every mould you make is going to be different. You're going to go about it a different way. Here I am building up a clay base until the halfway point on this form. This is going to be a 2-part mould. I'm also going to be showing you how you would set up a 1-part mould. ready. Okay, let's see what we have. You'll see here the edges go up a little bit. That's just from the meniscus caused when you poured in. So that will take off with our surf form. You can also use, say, handle of a knife or a metal ruler. You don't necessarily need a surf form, but it does create a nice even surface when you're done with it. So you see here the plaster as well has gone down a little bit to the base of the mould. That's fine, that all cracks off. You just want to be careful when you're taking this bit off not to crack too far into the top rim. That needs to be a nice clean rim for when you're actually blowing into it. So especially with a form like this, you need to be really, really careful when you take it out of the mould, because the corners here, if there's any plaster that's gone up over the edges, you can take it off at this point. Just gently ease it out. There we go. I'm going to use my surf form now to just even out the surface. Next thing you'll need to do is put in the locator notches on your mould. So what we do is use a 2-penny coin, and we're going to literally burrow into it to create a set hemisphere that goes into the mould. And what that'll do is when we cast the next half of it, it's going to act like a lock and key for this mould. So when we cast the next part, it'll go down into it and be the other half of it. When we're in the hot shop, that's very useful for when you're opening and closing the mould to position it right. So wash the form you were using so it's clean and ready to go for the next stage. So you need to make sure you cover both the mould positive and the first part of plaster in Vaseline before you start casting your second half, otherwise they won't separate. So the mould is then dried out for at least 7 days until it's completely bone dry. The morning that you're going to be using it in the hot shop, you will soak it in water for a few minutes. Then you will drill some air holes in it to allow the air to escape so that the glass can fill the mould completely. And then you'll need to cover the surface in a carbon resist that stops the glass sticking to the plaster. So this can be either graphite spray, or you can even coat the mould in sugar water, and as it burns it turns to carbon and acts as a release. I'm now going to show you a video of the blowing process.